Payment Protection Plan, AICPA resources for CPAs. Now, these are designed as resources for CPAs, but I think they're useful for anybody that wants to navigate around and get a feel for the information related to the Payment Protection Program, because they do a good job here of basically organizing this information, providing links, whether those links be to the IRS website or other types of resources and suggestions in and of themselves that are pretty well organized. So I want to scroll down to the bottom of this page. I'll put a link to this page in the description and concentrate down here where we have the Payment Protection Program resources. So some of these resources include actual calculators that they make in Excel, and it looks like they are updating these calculators, so that could be a resource that would be useful as well. And as we go through these resources, note they do provide links to relevant components, so it might be a good place that has everything kind of grouped together that gives you a good overview of what's going on. So we've got April 6, 2020, the U.S. Department of Treasury released additional PPP guidance. Please review Paycheck Protection Program loans frequently asked questions to assist with understanding the payroll protection calculations, affiliation rules, and more. So we then have a link to that information. April 2nd, 2020, the SBA issued new guidance related to the PPP. The resources we have provided will be updated as soon as possible. In the meantime, you can find interim guidance here. And there's a hyperlink there. We'll provide a hyperlink to this in the description. They also have emergency funding to offset coronavirus impacts on your business. Use this co-brandable resource to help your small business clients understand the new Payroll Protection Program PPP funding option. Dive into the details here. And that resource looks like this. It's a pretty well formatted overview of the program. So it's the emergency funding to offset the coronavirus impact for businesses. And then you could use this as basically a flyer if you're a CPA firm, or if you want basically the general overview for it. Then we have the PPP payroll calculators for loan application. So the PPP provides 3 scenarios for calculating the maximum loan amounts depending on how long the business has been in operation and whether it's seasonal. You can add all 3 to your COVID-19 resources library. They're designed so that your client can complete them following the steps outlined in the calculator. So we have these 3 calculators. So we saw that there's going to be 3 items. If you look at the actual application, there's 3 ways that you can end up calculating this. So the first way that most people would be calculating it is the PPP loan calculator, non-seasonal, and in business for 2/15/19 and 6/30/2019. And then if we have a seasonal and not in business for 2/15/2019, 6/30/2019, and then the PPP loan calculator seasonal business, this calculator will apply to clients that don't operate year-round. So typically, most people will be using this top one, but you have the options for those other kind of scenarios. The calculator looks like this. So you got the instructions first off. So loan calculator Paycheck Protection Program. How to use this calculator before you get started. Is your business seasonal? And if it is, then you want to think about using the other calculator. If no, then you want to continue with this calculator. Were you in business between February 15th, 2019 and June 30th, 2019? If yes, you can continue. If no, you could find the other calculator might be more suitable. Begin with calculating payroll costs tab. So that's actually the tab all the way to the right. This tab walks through the calculation for the average monthly payroll cost for application period. Ultimately, this calculation will help determine the max loan amount you may be eligible for. Note, there is a specific section that applies to sole proprietorships, contractors, and those that are self-employed. If available, run a payroll report for the applicable period and enter 12-month summary in the first column in the worksheet. Or this worksheet can be completed on a monthly basis if an annualized payroll report is not available. So typically you want the annualized payroll report, we're thinking 2019. If that's not available, then they have the monthly calculation. We'll take a look at that in a second. 2. The PPP loan calculation tab can be used to calculate your maximum eligible loan under the Paycheck Protection Program up to $10 million. Note, This template is based on interpretations of the CARES Act and U.S. Treasury guidance released March 31st, 2020 and April 2nd, 2020, as well as frequently asked questions released April 6th, 2020. There's links to those below. So you have the links to kind of the relevant information as to where they're pulling this stuff. Looks like they are obviously updating this constantly as well. So if you go back in here and pull the most recent calculator, you should have at least their interpretation of the most recent calculation. There are areas of the Act where additional clarification from the Treasury and SBA is needed. Your judgment and interpretations of the Act may be necessary. So note they're basically saying here, hey, this is our best guess, just like everybody else is saying. Right? So for more details, check out the full Coronavirus Aid Relief and Economic Securities CARES Act. So here it is, and you can have a link to it here. Guidance issued March 31st, 2020. Guidance issued April 2nd, 2020. And then the frequently asked questions, April 6th, 2020. Disclaimer. The contents of this resource do not necessarily reflect the position or opinion of the American Institute of CPAs, its division, and committees. This resource, so I won't go into that. They're disclaiming it, right? Okay. So then we have the calculation. Now, you have to start on the tab all the way to the right. And then that's going to calculate it over here. I don't know why they did that. It seems kind of backwards to me, but you want to start to the tab to the right. But this is the main calculation, and maybe this is why they did it, because this calculation ties into what you would see on the application. So the whole application, if you were to take a look at it, and there's a link to this in the AICPA website as well, it all comes down to this calculation here, right? That's going to be the confusing part of this whole thing. So then if you go back to our tab here, they have that calculation basically lined up here. So in essence, your end number is gonna be here with regards to that first calculation. Okay, so let's go to the calculating payroll cost. Now this is the key, of course, the payroll cost calculation. So the loan calculator, the Paycheck Protection Program, the PPP under the CARES Act, and 2019 calculating average monthly payroll costs. So we have the total including payroll costs minus the total excluding payroll costs equals payroll costs. So it says used to calculate pay intervals if choosing to request loan based on payroll costs for the previous 12 months. Okay, this template is based on interpretations of the CARES Act and U.S. Treasury guidelines or guidance released March 31st and April 2nd, 2020. As well as frequently asked questions released April 6, 2020. There are areas of the Act, okay, and then you have your links here if you want to get more verification or if you have questions on any of these calculations, which you may, you can then go in here and start to dig into more detail. Now, the biggest question, of course, on the calculation is the wage calculation. So then we have the gross wage. If you are an employer, then you're going to put the gross wage here. So I got the gross wage, let's just say 120,000. So see guidance issued April 2nd, 2020, section 2F, payment for the provision of employee benefits consisting of, and then we have the group health care coverage such as employer portion of insurance premiums. So again, where do you get the gross pay? It looks like you're looking for the gross pay that isn't being reduced, right? So that would be like the Medicare wages would probably be the closest on that if you're looking at basically the W-3 on that. So that's the gross pay, and it's not the net pay. They're talking the gross pay here. And then you've got, this is the group health care coverage such as employer portion of insurance premiums. So we can add in, looks like the employer portion of the insurance premiums here. So let's just say that was here. Let's just say. And then we got the retirement benefits. Now, again, you kind of got to be careful on the retirement benefits. Are they included in your gross wage calculation? If you pick like box 1, like a 401k or whatnot on the W-3, wouldn't be included in there, and then you'd probably be increasing it in that case by the retirement benefits. If you pick the Medicare wages on the W-3, then it might be possible that the 401k information is already included in that number. And this can kind of vary by the different types of plans, a 401k plan or different type of plans you have. But in essence, Just you want, if it's not if the retirement benefits aren't included in this number, then they're going to be included in payroll generally. So then you would include that here. Okay. So then if you are a sole proprietor, independent contractor, or self-employed individual, complete this section. So self-employed, then you would think that this number would be then the bottom line number on your net income, or the number that would be on the self-employment tax, because my interpretation of this is that it would be the number that you are using to calculate self-employment tax on, because that's kind of similar to payroll taxes for a W-2 employee. So the bottom line number, the net income that you're going to pay self-employment tax on. Now, again, I mean, again, if they were trying to equivalate this to a employee wages, you would think, well, what about the retirement plan and the health care for the sole proprietor, because they might not be included there. It doesn't look like you get to include those things, because those are deducted somewhere else. They're not on the Schedule C. They're going to be an adjustment. So it doesn't look like the sole proprietor has any adjustment for their particular health insurance if it's not included on the Schedule C, and their retirement plan if it's deducted somewhere at some other place. So that's how I would see it. So that would mean if you're sole proprietor, I would think that the amount that you're being charged self-employment tax on would basically be the number. So then we have the excluded payroll costs. So we have the compensation of individual employees or owners over the annual salaries. Now this is kind of confusing, and let me just kind of break this down from a practical standpoint, because the law basically is saying that you're going to take your total wages and then pull out the amount for the employees that are over the 100,000. So what would that mean? Like in reality, how would you calculate that? Let's just pull out another sheet here, and let's say that we had currency and none, and then I'll pull up what we would have is our payroll for our employees, employee 1, and so on, and employee 2, and so on and so forth, and we can copy that on down, maybe. And then, like, say we had our employees and we calculated the payroll here for them, let's say, and then we had someone here, and then so then we had, all right, and then we had the total, so this would be the total then. So that would be our total 382, right? But they're capping it at 100,000. So what's happening then is you're going to say, all right, but I'm going to cap it. What you would really do is look at all these and cap them at 100,000. So if this, you can use an if then type of formula, or just basically just so we can see it easily. We're going to say, oh, this one's over 100,000, so I'm going to make that 100,000, and I'm going to make that 100,000. Right, and so that means you're in essence using this number, because you cap the ones that are over 100,000, and you would think that you're basically using this number. So in essence, this is how you'd probably calculate it in practice. That makes sense. But the IRS is then, the way the code is written is that you do this little subtraction problem. And then I have to figure out the amount that's over the 100,000 and then subtract it out here. So they're saying you got to figure this number and then subtract out this 25. So that's just so you know, obviously when you calculate it in practice, you're probably doing something more like this, to get instead of this. So if we were to pull that over to our other number, let's say 382,000, let's say this was 382, and let's just remove this for now to remove the confusion of that. So that would be at the 382, and then you would think that they're going to pull out the 25, right? The 25 now is going to be the amount that's over 25, and that would get you down to the 357. So right, and that's going to be the 357. But in practice, you'd probably figure out the 357 before you figured out the 25, you know, because that just makes more sense to do it that way most of the time. Okay, then compensation for employees with principal place of residence outside the United States. So I'm not going to put anything there. Qualified sick leave wages for which a credit is allowed under Section 70001 of the Family First Coronavirus Response Act. So notice now you got this kind of overlap between these items. They're saying this is an item you already got a credit for, and so if you got the credit for it, then you're gonna have to put something here, and that's gonna reduce that amount, right? Because you basically would be getting double benefit from these two items that are for the same reason. Qualified family leave wages for which a credit is allowed under Section 7003 of the Family First. So same kind of thing. So that would affect this calculation as well. So now this if this is all we put in here, this number would come out to looks like the average monthly payroll costs of the 28,917, which of course is just the prior number divided by 12. That makes sense. I don't need a calculator for that because I could see the formula right there. So they just took that number in, just make sure. They took that number in D39 divided by 12. All right, that makes sense. And then if we pull that on over here, there's the 28,917 times the 2.5, and that's going to give us the 72,297. All right, that kind of makes sense. And then you have, did you take out an economic injury disaster loan between February 15th, 2020 and June 30th, 2020? If yes, and you want to refinance into a PPP loan, what is the outstanding loan amount? So you got these two programs now. You got the EIDL. You may have taken a loan out of that already. Now there's kind of a thing there in terms of, was it an advance? Did you take out the advance, which is like up to $10,000, or is it a loan, which you got to pay back, right? They have that advance thing and now a loan on it. I believe here you're looking at the loan that you're going to basically end up refinancing, right? You're refinancing. So that's a bit of a question to me as to whether the advance is included in here or not. I don't think it is, because I don't think you have to repay the advance, the $10,000. So the amount of the loan portion, I believe it is, this is my interpretation, would be here, right? So if you got, all right, I had a $30,000 here, let's just say, and then that's going to bring this amount up to the $102,292. So that's just me, messing with, their calculator tool here. So you can, obviously I just made up these numbers. So you can pull up their calculator tool here and you can mess with it too. It's great fun, and it is up to date, and it's got a lot of good resources that are basically linking to the sources. So every calculation you have a question on, it looks like they're linking to the relevant sources that they at least pulled the data from. So if you see any questions about anything, the link hopefully to the relevant information that they pulled the calculation from hopefully will be there for you.